In this video, I will explain how to write up the results of your regression analysis. Provided here on the screen is the output from SPSS for regression. So let's walk through what it provides you step by step. The first box here, you'll see it indicates what is the predictor. So you'll see that the predictor is prejudice, and the criterion that it's predicting is profiling. Now with regression, you can have more than one predictor. This is the simplest form where you have one predictor and one criterion. So again, the predictor is prejudice, and the dependent variable is profiling. So what the researchers are trying to figure out is if we know how prejudiced someone is, can we use that information to predict whether or not they were likely to engage in racial profiling? The model summary summarizes the R value with one predictor, small r, which is for your Pearson correlation, will equal big R, which is for your regression. So this again is for Pearson correlation, and here it's for regression. So R for Pearson correlation equals R for regression when there's one predictor. So that's important to know as well. So if you were to calculate the correlation between the two, you would get 6.24. Now it's a little bit different as you continue to add predictors, but with one predictor, this is the simplest form of a linear regression. The R squared, you may recall from correlation, is the coefficient of determination. So the coefficient of determination is denoted by little r squared for correlation, and again, with one predictor, it equals capital R squared. So again, when you have one predictor, little r squared equals capital R squared. So lowercase and uppercase. But they represent the lowercase is for correlation, the uppercase or the capital letters are for regression. So the R squared is the first information that you'll want to take note of because you'll be using that in the reporting of your R squared to test whether or not the model is significant. Now remember, you have two significance here, which often students will have questions about. Why do you have it twice? Well, the reason that we have it here is because here we're testing the model. Down here, we're testing each predictor. Now, we only have one predictor, so that's why we have a lot of questions. Why do you need another significance level? Here you could have multiple predictors listed, right? Maybe we want to know amount of exposure to other ethnicities. Maybe that's another measure. Maybe we'd want to know other measures of tolerance, and then we can list all of those as predictors. But again, this is the simplest model, just one predictor and one criterion. So that's why we have two significance. Here would be the model. Let's say we had 3 or 4 predictors. That would look at the model as a whole. And then down here with the coefficients, it would give you the individual contribution of each predictor. So when we're reporting the F test, we have 2 degrees of freedom. So it's nice to start writing your notes. Degrees of freedom always go in parentheses. And F is also known as a F ratio because when computing F, you have a numerator and a denominator. 1 is the degrees of freedom for the regression, and residual is error. So that's the degrees of freedom for error. So that's why we include 2 types of degrees of freedom for F. Then we indicate what it equals, which here it's 11, and we round it to 50. And then P is less than 0.05. because this number is less than 0.05. Then we also have to include the value of the significance of each predictor. In this case, there's just one. We'll also have to write that, so it's T. The degrees of freedom here is not provided. So the first thing that we want to know is how many people do we have total in this sample? Since we have 20 people in this sample, the t is 18. The degrees of freedom for t is 18. So the degrees of freedom for this t-test is n, which is how many people, minus 2. The value of t is here, which is 3.39. And that also is significant at 0.05. So you'll notice that this is typed here already, and we also include the slope, which is for the coefficient of prejudice. And so we'll include it all in this AP style formatting of how to report these results, and we'll put it all together. So here, ratings of prejudice, and because it was significant, we can say significantly, and this is the significance because this is looking at the individual predictor, significantly predicted profiling. You include the slope, which came from the unstandardized coefficient, and t, the degrees of freedom. Remember, this degrees of freedom is n minus 2 equals 3.39. That was found here. And p is less than 0.05. That's why we said it was significant. Next sentence, that's also part of our reporting of the regression, is ratings of prejudice also predicted a significant proportion of variance in profiling. Remember, r squared, or a coefficient of determination, indicates the proportion of variance that is accounted for. And in this case, r squared is accounting for 0.39. And it was significant because we saw that it was significant here. So we can say that it predicted a significant proportion of variance in profiling, which is what we were predicting. This is our criterion. And then we've already indicated the degrees of freedom for the F, so that's typed here, what F equals, which is typed here, and then that it is significant is always P less than 0.05. And that's how you would write up the results for a regression from SPSS.